acting state person officer, because we do have some changes that are due to the CPO notice 2018 system, and show you how to do a small purchase of $10,000 and as well as a small purchase over $10,000. So first, link, and I'll go ahead and send these slides out to everyone who's on the call today. There's a link to the CPO notice, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to walk you through some of those changes now. Okay, so we want to talk about the importance of having the state agency small purchase designation. It is very important because in order to utilize the processes that I'm going to walk through today, you need to have that state agency small purchase designation memo on file with the Chief Procurement Office. And what this is the responsibility for the procurement authority is designated out to the agency less than $10,000 if that memo is by the director, the agency head, as well as the SPO. If there is no agency, I'll follow procedures as described in number 8. So these different conditions, we'll walk through each one of those conditions, but to be able to utilize those this process, you'll have to have that small designation memo on file. And here's an example of it. A version did go out with the CPO notice, and I'll show you at the end where you can find this if you are unaware that if he has the small purchase designation memo on file or not. I'll make note, the authority shall be in effect if there's a new SPO or if a new agency head is assigned to the agency. So I do want to make a note there. There was several questions regarding that. I'm not going to read this entire thing for you, but this is section 20-155 from the procurement code, and really what it talks about is what needs to be in the procurement file. And I highlight this down here where it says the procurement file shall contain a written termination signed by the Chief Procurement Officer or State Purchasing Officer, setting forth the reasoning for the contract award decision. That written determination is that small purchase designation memo. So if it is less than $10,000, a copy of that small purchase designation memo will need to be in the file within BidBuy. So every separate small purchase less than $10,000 will have that written determination in there. If it's greater than $10,000, the written determination is having to approve it. And so if it's over $10,000, it's already going to be hitting that state purchasing officer within the approval path. So small purchases, go forward, small purchases with sole source or emergency conditions are no longer set aside for small businesses. Where in the past, a source or emergency condition less than $100,000, which is the small purchase threshold, is a small purchase, it will still technically set aside for small business. However, with being a sole source or emergency, the agency could source a single small purchase or a single small business or a non-small business. But if they awarded to a non-small business, they would still have to have a waiver in the file. And really what this is taking away that waiver requirement. So we'll walk through each one of the conditions here to make sure that we're crystal clear. And, like as well as, you'll have access to the CPO notice. So depending on what your small business is, you can always go back and take a look at the table that we'll provide for your different thresholds. Okay, so walk through a couple of those conditions. A small purchase that's less than $2,000, there's no change here. These procurements are not set aside for small businesses. The agency can source a single small business or a non-small business. There's no waiver. The SO does not need to be involved. The SPO is not required. And this executed state agency small purchase designation memo serves as the written determination for awarding the contract. So if it's dollars, it doesn't need to be in BidBuy, etc. Only those purchases that are greater than $2,000 need to be within BidBuy. So no change here. Next condition, a small purchase from $2,000 to $10,000. There's change here as well. This is for those general small purchases that there's no emergency or no sole source conditions exist. The state agency can source a single small business vendor. So the agency can go direct to a single small business. All small business vendors with the selected NIGP codes must be solicited unless the agency is able to source a single small business. So if your agency, say, doesn't go, it can go directly to a small business, they then solicit that have that NIGP code. And this small business vendor could be used only after those small business vendors have been solicited and determined unacceptable. Perhaps no responses were received. Business waiver is required to be in the file and attached in BidBuy, awarding the procurement to a non-small business vendor. The agency shall authorize the small business waiver if appropriate, if it's that $2,000 to $10,000. There's SPO involvement, and once again, the state agency small purchase designation memo as the written determination. Okay, changes. So if it's a small purchase when emergency conditions exist from 2,000 to 10,000, the agency now determines if a small purchase meets the emergency needs or meets the emergency conditions. The agency can source a single small business or a non-small business. No SPO involvement. And the small purchase designation memo serves as the written determination. So change here. In the past, the SP to be involved for that emergency condition 2 to 10, and there would need to be a waiver. But since the state agency can source a single small business or a non-small business and no longer set aside small businesses, that waiver is no longer required. Okay, we get next condition. It's a sole source from 2,000 to 10,000. This is similar. The agency determines if a small purchase meets the sole source conditions. The agency may source a single small business or a non-small business. No SPO involvement is required, so that has changed. Again, that state agency small purchase designation memo serves as the written determination. Small purchase greater than $10,000 up to the small purchase threshold, which is currently at $100,000. There's no change here. But just as a quick refresher, these procurements are set aside for small businesses. So this general small purchase, so there's no emergency, no sole conditions exist. All small business vendors with the selected NIGP codes must be solicited, and a non-business can be used only after all the small business vendors have been solicited and determined unacceptable, or another justification warrants the use of a non-small business vendor. Now, it will be required if the award goes to a non-small business. Since it's over the $10,000, the SPO shall authorize the small business waiver if appropriate. From there is, if it's less than $10,000, the agency will sign a waiver, the small business waiver. If it's within $10,000, the SPO will authorize the small business waiver. But if it's greater than $2,000 and is awarded to non-small business, you see a small business waiver needing to be required to be in that procurement file. A small purchase with emergency conditions greater than $10,000. This is a change as well. The agency can still a single small business or a non-small business. Now, SPO approval is required because it's greater than that $10,000. So approval paths that are set up in BidBuy will automatically hit the SPO if it is greater than $10,000. How to change here is you no longer have to have a small business waiver in the file. Very similar, the sole source conditions greater than $10,000. Similarly to the emergency, the state agency can still source a single small business or non-small business, but since it's over the $10,000 threshold, the SPO approval is required. Those conditions, and here's a handy-dandy table that is in the notes as well, but this is, you can always go back and see, okay, what is my dollar value here? What are my procurement conditions? And that way, really go and take a look at, okay, is this set aside for small businesses? Is the waiver required? And who signs that small business waiver? Okay, helpful for you to be able to go and reference. Now, that's if your agency has a small business designation memo on file. I will say this, most agencies do. However, there are several that do not. So if you have any questions about that, you could reach out to your agent procurement officer or your state purchasing officer, and they can let you know. Or you can always email me too. You'll have contact information after I send out all the slides today. If they do not have a small purchase designation memo on file, the state agency will submit a monthly report to the state purchasing officer detailing each small purchase completed in the previous month with all of information. So the date of award, the name of the vendor, the estimated contract value, the description of the supplier service, and whether the awarded vendor is in the Small Business Set-Aside Program. Then PO shall provide written determination that each one of those small purchases meets the requirements in the applicable sections of the procurement code and administrative rule. So all to say, it will be to the benefit of the agency to have that memo on file, but however, it is not required. But if not, they will have to go through this process. Each one of those, because it really comes back down to the PO. There must be a written determination for every single award, no matter what the cost. Okay. Any other additional questions about that? Please feel free to jump in and ask, or we can talk about it a little bit later on at the end of the presentation. We've gone through the requirements notice and some of those changes, so I'm going to go out and get into the BidBuy system. And I'm actually already logged in here. You'll see I'm in the training environment because it's green and it's all a little different because we want to be purchasing things in the production. So the first thing we're going to do is go into documents and we're going to create a requisition. And let me take just a quick step back. So first of all, we're going to do a purchase that is less than $10,000. So we're doing a requisition that goes directly to a purchase order. So we'll be sending out some RFQ, a request for quote, to some vendors. And if it's $10, we go from requisition to purchase order. Greater than $10,000, we'll go requisition. We'll convert it to bid in order to be able to hit the approved paths, and then that bid will be converted to a purchase order. So if we're going to do a requisition, new, and now we're going to fill our information. We'll see these tabs. We're going to fill out these tabs from left to right. We're going to fill out all the required information, and the required information on each tab will be indicated by having an asterisk here. So your description, this should uniquely identify the procurement, as this is a searchable field. So you'll be able to come back and search for a short description later on by using this magnifying glass up here. So it is helpful to have exactly what's saying, etc. I'm just going to name this the small purchase under $10,000, and then put in all of the information that we need. Position type, open market. If that will release, that is a release off of a master contract. But open market, let's see, well, not required, but we could put what we needed to. Save and continue. When continue, you'll see saved successfully or up here as a confirmation message. So that's good. We're going to move on to our next tab. Now there's two ways to add items here. We can either search items or we can add open market items. So I'm going to go ahead and show you both ways. Searching items takes all of the purchase system and it to search for items that went to a purchase order. So advanced search, you can buy a description. This is where some of those come in handy. Let's say for this one, we'll do a fire extinguisher. All of our fire extinguishers, they went off a purchase order here. So we're going to go ahead and add, let's see, fire extinguishers. We'll go pick here. We're going to select how many extinguishers do we need. Let's say we need, we're going to scroll and we're going to click Add to Rec and Exit. My Items tab is that way. Search items. The other way is if it's a new item perhaps, and this is the way you can delete it. I'm going to click Delete. If you say Continue, delete, yes I do. And now so items. Now the new way to another way to add items is we're going to add an open market item, fill out all of our information here. So here put in fire extinguishers. Cost, that's just an estimation, kind of the work through tool paths. We're going to estimate they're at 150 a piece. You have unit of measure here, top down, which you can utilize. It's set for each at this point, but you can go through within the appendix. You can utilize all of the different types of units of measure here, but I'm happy with my each. We're good there. Our NIGP class item, if I know item, I can just click it in, or I can use down, or I use the magnifying glass to look it up. I have all these different searchable functionalities here. What is 340? So our protection. Now we're going to add the class item. And add new if we're using multiple items, or save it and exit. If we continue, it sits and then just keeps it on the same page. But I'm going to save and exit and get that. Okay, so items now. Our vendors. And we're going to look up and add our vendors. So this is the vendor list that we're going to send our request for quote out to. So we look vendors. Here, if you use Google Chrome, a lot of times that wants to auto-populate with a name, so it has like login information there. So click, and what we're going to do is we're going to search for NIGP class item, which was E40. So we're putting in our here, and this is set aside for small businesses. We're going to find it. Now I do want to make a note here between the difference between find it and find vendors for all commodity codes on the requisition. So if I click find it, and I want to click small business set aside because we're searching for our small business set aside, right? We click set aside. If I click find it, it's going to look for vendor, the NIGP code listed here, as well as any of these searching functions in here. So it's going to search for small business set aside program vendors that have the NIGP. If I click find vendors for all commodity codes, it's going to find all of the vendors that have that code. It's not going to be searching for small business vendors. So we're going to go ahead and click find it. Now I will make this note that since we're a training environment, we don't have those loaded with a bunch of the small business vendors. So what I do, so normally you see your list here, but what I'm going to go back and just pick our train vendor. And so here we're going to go ahead and select all, because you went out to all those vendors. And now we're going to see all of our okay. Now we're going to need to go in and add our attachments and stuff first. So I'm not going to. You'll see that once I click publish a formal bid, we're certainly going to do that. Now we're going to select our bidder participation. So we're going to put bid informal bid, because these selected vendors can view and respond. Put in our the bid ending date. We'll go ahead and say that we would put it out for normally the reason, depending on what you would do, normally 5 days ish for something, but we'll say 9/23. I'm just that, but get that in that amount of time. Okay, and continue. You're going to see that I can notify vendors, and we're going to add what we can search or go ahead and notify the vendors by putting in our request for a quote. Now, there's two ways to do this. I can go ahead and add in the attachments first. First, I'm going to add a couple of the other information. I have my address. That's going to be populated. If you need to change it, you can utilize this searching function here to add different addresses. Now this is because it really drives all the approval paths. So we're going to add special procurement types here. But to do is click here to find our options. We have our different procurement types here. One, it's going to be not applicable. More often than not, it will be not applicable, but I have these other options: anticipation of litigation, joint purchasing, purchase of care, etc., that will drive different approval paths. So I'm going to select there. Our manual, we say based on percentages, which is going to do the accounting function and take into our price account. And then we're going to rebuild for all of those items that are listed. We have the one. We'll always do save based on percentages, rebuild for all items. And you get my warning, accounting warning is now gone. Tab. There will be no approval paths set up for that just yet. Attachments. Talk about the two different ways. We can add the attachments here, and I'll how to do that. We'll add file. We're going to go file, and so this will be our request for quote. We'll go ahead and just picture here for our simple request for quote. Have it titled request for quote, etc. That'd be good. You are able to add in a description if you'd like. Need to. I'm going to exit. And see that I see in the CC I have one, so I have my attachments. I file my description here, so that's listed. This is very important because it says show to vendor. If for some, because later on we will add additional documents into the procurement file here, and we will uncheck some of those. But for this one, we want to show the vendor. And there is an appendix, Appendix B, that shows you a document at every status and whether or not to show that to vendor or to keep it confidential, etc. So that's a very important resource that I utilize a lot. But I'm happy with what I have here. Say continue. I don't need to add anything else at this point. I'm just going to go ahead and send RFQ out to our vendors. So when we add the attachments, another is if we're at our vendors tab, we're going to go ahead and notify the vendors. So we're going to made it so close. Bidding date has to be later than today. So I almost did 9/24. Where is? Sorry, I need bid ending date. Since I'll need to save and continue, I will notify the vendors to all of these, and we're going to notification to selected vendors. I am allowed to go ahead and file and update an attachment there. Could have added it at that point as well, but I like to just go ahead and put it in the attachment, so I go through all my tabs and then go back and notify. But you do it either way. You could go ahead and send it directly from the vendors tab and upload your attachment that way as well. So this is saying, are you sure you wish to continue? Yes, I do. And then confirmation of all those that received your request for quote. Okay. We're going to for a couple days. We start to receive some quotes, etc. We're going to put in a couple quotes here on behalf of the vendor. So you see over here underneath here, you have your informal quote. Go ahead and we can create a quote on behalf of a vendor, or see that they had responded by over here on the right. So vendor, put in $1 a piece. How quick and easy it is. Now, if you look on to the right, you can see that train vendor 1 under the informal quote got changed from create to view or edit. So on quotes, those they can be edited, withdrawn, etc., all the way up to that bid ending date. And let's go another one. just so we have from here. This, let's see, to $160 a piece. Save and exit. Okay, so we have all these in. We're past bid ending date. Now you can see that there's another button down here at the bottom called the informal quote tabulation. So we're going to do the quote tabulation now. And it brings up this pop-up window. And really what it does is it says, hey, this is your vendor. It has two asterisks. It's kind of highlighted in green. This is our low price. We're going to click on that vendor. We're going to apply the pricing. And so now apply the pricing to be able to add this as a recommended vendor. So if you see next to train vendor 1, there's a recommended vendor. So we're going to submit this for approval up our approval paths with this as the recommended vendor. Okay, so we go to our summary tab. We do recommended vendor. So if I scroll down, you can see all the information. You can see that the vendors. You can see any of them are recommended, and we have vendor 1 is recommended, and submit for approval. So now you won't see this screen in the training environment. Rather than sending it out and me going out to go technically approve, we're going to just automatically approve. But normally, once you submit that for approval, it'll show the routing. It's going to let you know who the requisite going to next. You can click continue, and it'll move on to that approval path. So we're going to do that, and what it's going to go. Our status is now going to change from in progress is now purchasing. Okay, so it's now been approved, and we're going to it's gone through to your APO, etc., any of the other approval paths that needed to, and we're going to convert to purchase order. So this is less than $10,000. We go requisition direct to purchase order. So we're going to order. Are you sure you want to convert this requisition to a purchase order? Yes, I am. You use different options, but in this sense, we're going to use a single purchase order using the header recommended vendor because we have this recommended vendor that was tabulated. That is our low cost, etc. So make a single purchase order. That was recommended. We're going to come to purchase order. Due to be processed, so that's processed. Our status is changed to gone to purchase order, and we have a link to purchase order. So now we're going to go process the purchase order and have to put in additional information that is needed there. Okay, let's change statuses into a purchase order. It's always going to start me here at the summary tab and really just says, hey, here's all the information that you're going to have to input throughout those different tabs. So if you have an over-validation error that's in red, it won't allow you to save and continue and move on to the next status. Go to my general, input information that is needed here. Type code. This is a as we go on. Is this set aside? Yes, it is. Are you a registered small business? Yes, we are. Actual contract begin date. Now, this would depend on the contract, etc. But for our fire extinguishers, they said they're going to send it to us. So add your date there. Field of obligation, will be 2019. And so here are SAP custom columns. So it really depends on that will be forthcoming for the AP system. A vendor number, we know, so we're just going to put that in there in the training environment. The full SAP contract value was $3,000. The publication date was today, and now we'll continue. Okay, as I move along through the tabs, all of the information that was in the previous status will be into the purchase order. So, for instance, all this items, this is what we put in on the rec, so that's all there. The vendor, this is vendor, so nothing needs to be here. Our address, the address. We already accounting functionality, so I'm kind of moving through these tabs just to make sure that there's no errors there. The routing. So if there would be a additional information that would be needed here, depending on the purchase price. So, for instance, a purchase that is then $50,000. For instance, you would have your financial disclosures would be involved here. You'd have Forms A, Forms B, certifications. Those, any of the paperwork that is needed to be in the procurement file would be added here as well. This is than $10,000, so you don't even need a procurement justification form that would be in there. We'll get to that when we get to the next small purchase greater than $10,000. To add anything else here is just it's an internal, almost like a post note to yourself. You are able to show the vendor, but you don't need to. This would just be an internal note to yourself. We don't have any change orders yet for this. Reminders. Now, the reminders functionality is something that I think you'll utilize in there in ways to be able to utilize functionality by putting a date. You want somebody else come in and take a look at something, or remind different people about this. So I'm going to pick to date. Now then, the automatic approval paths that are already set up. So you wouldn't need to remind someone to read something that's already going to be in your approval path, like APO, for instance. I mean, myself, I think this is where I would utilize it a lot, is reminding myself to go look at something of a date. So maybe the dates on the due date for when a bid might want to send yourself a reminder. I'm going to click send email, and then we'll save and continue. And then you can go back and look and see what reminders were for this procurement. Tab, I'm going to review one final review of everything that's in here, who we're sending it to, the actual costs. We're going to take a look at all of that information here and review that before we submit for approval. RFQ here, I guess what would be the attendance? Let's see, would be the, I'll go ahead and add something. That'll be the actual, this would be the vendor quote, could be in there. So that allows you at this point to see, okay, what's confidential, what's not. And we'll get to that when if you had a document that has financial disclosures, etc., you would have to have that confidential. And I would always refer you back to that Appendix B that is within the BidBuy resources that really lays out what needs to be confidential and what not. So we'll get to the sub and submit this for approval. This is going to go through the approval paths that are set up in BidBuy. You won't be automatically approved this, but since we're in the training environment, we will. Now it's send. So anytime that you have a ready to send, ready for purchasing, etc., means that, hey, there's one more thing you need to do. So ready to send. This isn't sent out yet. I'm going to move down, scroll down, and two options. I can send mail and notify the vendor, or to printed status. Now, two differences here is if I set to printed status, it doesn't automatically email the vendor. But of course, in this situation, we want to be able to send to the vendor, say, yes, you're rewarded. We're going to purchase fire extinguishers from you. So we're move from ready to send to sent status. So now you sent the purchase order out to your vendor, and you are okay. How you do a small purchase less than $10,000? Back and look at a small purchase $10,000 and greater. do requisition, new. So we're requisition to bid to purchase order now. So we're our short description, whatever we're going to buy here. We're going to call this small purchase over $10,000, but you would put in, we're buying fire extinguishers, whatever you're going to. Ours is an open market. Save and continue. So very similar process for the requisition. It's going to be exactly the same. We'll say search items just to kind of here. What's something that we have a lot of? Let's do that. Oh, I didn't add. Excuse me. Exit. There we go. That's at 100. So actually, you know what? I'm going to go in and change that because I want it to be just below 100. Save and exit. Okay. Now, this is where it's going to be a little bit different because we're not going to add and we're not going to notify the vendors. We'll actually do that at the bid tab. Or sorry, not the bid tab, at the bid stage. So at this point, we're just doing the requisition. We're just doing the need, the agency needs. We'll go through this. I don't need to change the address. The accounting, if you remember, we click on the magnify glass, find it to find our options. This is going to be not applicable based on percentages and rebuild for all items. Save accounting, and then we rebuild to kind of save it all. We're not going to see any routing at this point. Tabs, once again, we'll add our request for quote here by choosing all. We're going to find our document. And this will be RFQ for security guards. Of course, we will show the vendor here. This, since it's greater than $10,000, we're going to want to add the procurement justification form. So we do find it, right, to fill our options. And we're options here that are forms that are already loaded in and built within the system. So this is pretty handy. We're our procurement justification form. We want to edit and attach the form. If form error, this happens a lot in the training environment. Just go back and try it in, and then it'll allow me to get in there. It's kind of a quirk within the system. So you go ahead and fill out the procurement justification form. Then I'm kind of going through this quickly, but you would complete this, save, complete. I'm going to click exit, and now you're going to see that I have this procurement justification form in there. Of course, this is an example of a document that we do not want to show the vendor. And I'll go ahead and delete why there's two there. Save and continue. I have my request for quote, show vendor, which is great. For a procurement justification form, we're not showing the vendor. So that's good. And we have successfully. We'll go ahead and move along. We have our, once again, that's just kind of like your sticky, your post-it note to yourself if you need to. Reminders at this point, I don't see where you'd want to use the reminders tab just yet. And we're going to submit this for approval. Now, you're going to see that there's no recommended vendor. Makes sense, right? Because we're going to add vendors at the bid stage. So at this point, that's okay. It's the difference between having that yellow vendor validation warning versus a red hard stop. Okay, so submit this for approval. We're going to automatically approve this. So this goes through the approval process, hits the AO, etc. We are going to go ahead and send this out. Once it gets approved, it will be changed from in progress into ready for purchasing. So purchasing means we're going to convert to a bid. Now, since this is over $10,000, we're going to go to a bid. Are you sure you want to? It's gone to bid. Okay, a link to our new bid. So if we go to the bid and send this out to the vendors. Once again, once changed to a new status, it starts us on the summary tab with all the validation errors. So we're going to fill in some of the additional information that we need to. The type code, this is a small purchase. Response, yes, we want to allow the electronic response. Bidding date, let's set that for 5. Available date, we're just going to make it now. It does allow you to make it available in the future if that's something that you would like to do. Description, you get in here, that's going to talk about the services, SPM. Let's see, we don't have a special procurement. Is it subject to small business set aside? Yes, it is, because we are going to add less than $100,000. Are you utilizing an active small business spend? We don't know yet, right? So we're going to put not applicable and continue. Was brought over from the requisition stage, so we're good with that. One I would like to make about the items tab is within that tab, you can always go back and look at your different links. So on this, you can see this is the requisition. So if you need to go back and look at a requisition for this particular bid, you always go to the items tab and you can see that. So once you get to the purchase order and go to the items tab, you'll see the link to the rec, you'll see the link to the bid as well as a link to the quote from the vendor. So that your hyperlinks will be there. Good with that. Account functionality has already been brought over from the rec. Routing tab. The attachments, you just want to make sure that this is me sending out. So our request for quote. We already have our procurement justification form. If there's any additional information that would need to be added here, or if you need to change queue and add something there, this now would be the time to do that because we're going to be sending this out. So we talked about this tab. So now we're going to do the same thing with our bidders. We're going to look and add vendors. We did before, we're going to look up by the NIG class item, or the NIG by and class item. You would be small business set aside. Find it. See, we one vendor there. It would be once again a restricted bid. We want these vendors to be able to see it. And one thing, we're going to hide the bid holder list on the vendor side. And what that is, if you go into the main page for BidBuy, if you look up some of these bids, over on the side there's a bid holder list, and what it means is it shows a list of the vendors who have downloaded the RQ or that bid. So we want to hide that. We want to keep that on the side, so that way on the vendor side. So they do that, and you all of them. So do saving. Go ahead and put in questions if you need. You can make it required, but we're not to for this one. There aren't any amendments. Question answer. This isn't really utilized as much through here for small purchase. That's something that's really utilized more for other procurement types. You can allow a vendor to submit questions through system here, and put in a send notification when a vendor is submitting a question to you. Tab, we talk reminders tab, and to the summary. Okay, 9/46. I need to change my opening date here. Oh, what is it? Oh, okay, I'm close. I'm going to go ahead and submit for approval. Automatically approving here. Otherwise, it would go through the approval paths. Ready to send, which means I haven't yet. There's something else I need to do. So this is what the status to send and notify vendors. We want to do that. We're going to send it out. Who are we to? To that one vendor. See that it's in sent status. Okay. Point. You would wait till it reaches the date and time, and go back in and see what kind of quotes we got. So past it's 9/47. I will go now and see open bid. And now go to the bid tab. So this is where we're going to take all the quotes and bids. We go to bid. Of course, there are no quotes submitted for this bid. Otherwise, you would see them listed here. Go ahead and create a new quote on the behalf of the vendor. So we click our vendor, and we're going to have all vendors that received it would be listed in the drop-down. So we have our training vendor 2 received, because of course we make sure we leave it before the bid ending date. Continue. Terms and conditions are not acknowledged. We can see here on our quotes here, or our validation errors. So we're going to go to the terms and conditions. You accept the terms and conditions of the bid. So yes, we're just on behalf of the vendor here, but they would have already done this. Yes, and then a summary, and we're going to submit the quote on their behalf. So submit the quote. Are you sure to submit the quote? Yes. Okay, so in this bid, you can see the status has gone into it's been submitted. So we our bid tab, and you'll see here that it's been. Okay, so and award this bid tab by going to the items tab, and we're gonna award. Oh wait, let me go back. Go back to my. Sorry, I put it in as 0. So let me go back to bid, and I'm going to do quote. So I'm going to go for that vendor. Sorry, I didn't actually put in the actual. I didn't put vendor. So I save and continue. Back here is the price. There we go. So put in the cost for $9,000 for everything that is involved security services. I need to, since it's a new quote, I'm going to accept. Then I submit the bid or submit the quote. And then now I'll be able to see in the bid our different quotes. Okay, so now once we go through here, we're going to our different vendors. So I'm not going to consider this one. We're going to award all to the training vendor 2. Now, of course, awarding them. This is you putting in something that you intend to award, and then you'll submit this for approval. So go along through here, through the summary, and submit this for approval. Okay. Once again, this will go through the AO. Since it's over $1,000, it will go to the FPO as well in order to approve this award. Or approve it just to keep things moving here. So now approved, And now we're going to create the purchase order. So with order, we want to utilize all this information that's in there because we want to carry it all into the next status. So we're going to create the purchase order, continue, and it'll say is accounting transaction is being processed. Now our status is bid to purchase order, and we have our new purchase order link. So it says the new purchase order in the same way that we did, almost identically to the other one that we did earlier. So and fill in additional information, type code small purchase. Is this subject small business said? Yes. Are we utilizing a small business? Yes, we are. Begin, say that it's according to the contract. Contract 8, you put in the contract 8. The obligation is 2019. One of that SAP information that's in here, that you'll have additional training on that. The vendor number, the SAP value number was $90,000. We published it on August 1st. Save and continue. Okay, here we're not going to change the items. That was already brought over from the bid. It's going to show our vendor. Oh, I did want to make a note here, items. This I was talking about earlier where on the items tab for the purchase order, it links back to the requisition, to the bid, and to the quote for the winning vendor. So our winning vendor, changing anything, if we needed to change the ship to, bill to items, we could do that at this time. The accounting functionality has already been done. This is where you would receive the over $90,000. So we would have the certifications with the Form A or Forms B for disclosure documents. You'd have signed by the contract here, and we would end up. We're going to come back and attach the signed contract from the vendor by doing a change order, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. This is where you would be attaching additional information because, again, this is the procurement file. So if that paperwork that would need to be done, any of those forms, certifications, etc., would all be here. Talked about the notes. I don't think we need it at this time, but the reminder functionality would be used for instance, to send this to procurement board. That is something that will be added well. And I want to submit this for approval. Once again, we approve, but that would go through approval paths, APO, SPO, etc. And now this is into resend. So once again, that term red means there's something else to be done here. So we're going to send email and notify the vendor. Okay. We know this is going to go into sent status. Now the vendor could print vendor copy. You have a couple different options here. If you needed to print, you could print. However, we received, fast forward a little bit, the signed contract from the vendor, and we're going to add that to the procurement file by doing a change order. So we do this. So create change order. We're going to go to attachments. Now you can see that we're inside the change order. So we're attaching this to the and we're going to add file. And once again, go into the file. And then I'm going to go ahead in the description here just so we can see it will be the executed save it. Now you can see here by the description, this is the executed contract. We needed to make these confidential or not. You can always take a look at that Appendix B. We're going to continue. Then we'll get to the summary tab. So this is all within the change order. We can comment for the entire change order. I always suggest putting in a comment here because when you go back and look at the change orders tab, it's really easy to see what was done by the change order. So I'm going to put in attaching executed contract, and then I'm going to submit this for approval. So it goes through the approval paths to ensure that, okay, this is the attached contract, etc. We're going to do that. It's been approved. Now we will apply the change order. So really, if you look here, it says underneath after you click apply change order, all changes will be updated in the real document. So we apply the and you can see change orders tab. And so this is where I in that comment, and that's why I think it's very helpful. The comment rather than having to go into each individual change order to see what was happening. But you can't. You go if I go inside this change order, I can see that okay, what happened? This file was added by this user on this date and was the vendor. That's why that's very appropriate comment. It's easier just to kind of see that. At that point, we've passed our executed contract and we are done. Fairly quickly, I will be sending out slides that were done today, as well as this was being recorded, and we'll find a place to post it, and we'll send that information out to everybody as well. So this so you can go back and take a look at it. But one thing I did show you is the Chief Procurement Office web. A couple here. So if you go to the Procurement Resources Library, there's a ton of information out here for you to be able to go through and take a look at information. But what I want to highlight was the CPO notices and CPO notice. So this is where this is the data we were looking at today. Purchase, process, CPO notice, etc. So you can back and monitor that if you'd like. And this is what I went through today was all the changes for the process. The thing I wanted to look at is all the resources that are available for you for BidBuy. If you go out and click the bid link, we have sources for state agencies. And this is helpful because we have a couple different things. We have a reference library and a video library. Registration, there's a frequently asked questions section, so you can always check out. We have station here. So for instance, if you go to the different procurement types, small purchase, this is looking at today. It's very helpful to go through these trades. There are say like checklists, so I'll just pull one up just to show you. But because it walks you through the process step by step and really shows you what you need to do. So here's an example of that where it kind of goes through, we're correct, you know, who does it, what's the task, what tab, etc. So this is very helpful. One as well for the small greater than $10,000. So all this information here, system manual, etc. Process manual. Has the library where there are these webinars that have been recorded for you. So you can go and take a look at all of these, all of the different agency webinars, all the train the trainer support webinars. So you'll be able to see PowerPoint as well as the webinar recording. So if you go and take a look at all these videos that you can take a look at for those different procurement types, etc. So the slides, you'll have my contact information, and I will go ahead. Looks like we're actually past our 10 o'clock time here. So if you have questions, please me, and I really appreciate you being here on the call today. The next training that we'll be doing will be the first Wednesday of next month, which is to be September 5th. You can always go and register there by going to the homepage and going to this calendar of events, and we'll update all the training information there as well for you. Okay, everybody, for spending your time, and have a wonderful day. Thank you.